Again.
Details about this shooting is
on a mass shooting.
And again.
Allegedly went on a shooting rampage at a Dallas high school.
Allegedly threatened to kill a woman and commit a mass shooting.
It happens so much today, we don't even see it anymore. It's just another shooting.
Tragic scene in California, a mass shooting.
Another killing. Just another interview, another prayers to the family. It's just another suicide, another shooting, another manic depressive disorder from another guy. It happens so much. It's just a way of life here in America. But is it? Is the fact that we have guns in America a guarantee that mass shootings will occur? Or is it something else? Is there a correlation between raising overly emotional men leading to lash outs and destruction? Let's explore today why emotional intelligence through the lens of femininity and how trying to convince the world's men to be more feminine is leading to the destruction of our society. So let's start off by getting an understanding, according to AI, on what emotional intelligence actually is. According to AI, emotional intelligence is the capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. I think women do this very well. They are really good at taking the time out with the people they like and really digging in deep in how they feel. So when those conversations are done, they can just move on. It's a skill that gives them a longer lifespan, makes them less suicidal, and in general, happier. So, in a society that is fixated on identifying the issues that men had in the past and correcting those issues in men of the modern age, it makes perfect sense to see women as the ideal representation and say, do that. It makes sense. The problem is that for men, that method does not work. Now, there are three main reasons as to why this method doesn't work for guys. And it also contributes to a lot of the mass shootings and suicides going on in America. Let's talk about them. One, the raw differences on how men and women think fundamentally. To me, this is probably one of the bigger problems because it doesn't just affect us in the area of trying to get men to evolve. I mean, all of our political problems stem from this idea that we don't want to identify the differences in people. I think that the thought behind that is generally coming from a good place. But if you don't identify and focus on the differences between people, how do you optimize your problem solving skills to get the best result for everyone? So you might be asking, what are the differences between the way men and women think? Well, in the context, it boils down to this. Men are 80% logic, 20% heart, or 80% action, 20% emotion. Women are the opposite of that. It is why they are so much better at communication about their deep emotions. I think a really good example of this is in the area of self-defense. Women are typically going to be victimized physically by men. Now, a great equalizer of this force would be to get a firearm or a taser. I mean, even learning a self-defense skill would be better than nothing. But how many women actually commit to any one of these things? How many women actually walk around with pepper spray? Not very many. Why is that? What women typically do is that they will discuss why it's unreasonable for them to have to do that in the first place. And I'm not here to say that they're wrong for feeling that way, but that is based off of feeling in which the world does not run off of. It's not that they can't think logically. I'm not saying that they're wrong for prioritizing their feelings. It is in their nature. But what I'm saying is that it's harder for women to think logically and apply action to that logic because their feelings are a priority. Right? Men are 100% the opposite of that. We tend to prioritize problem solving skills over communicating about our problems. Obviously, on both ends of that candle, there are issues. Regardless, though, we do have to evolve as a species, which means that men need to evolve. So we do need to prioritize emotional communication a bit more. Now, you might be thinking, but Lamar, we already do this now, and this is why we have a whole bunch of shootings. Yeah, you're right. The problem is that there is no balance in that. The problem is, instead of understanding that men think fundamentally different than women and tooling ourselves to how men think, we've created a society that demands men behave identically to women in terms of their emotional processing. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, we have our next issue. The speed the demand is for men to make this change. I want you to imagine you're driving down the street and you're getting directions from your girlfriend, but she is a bit confused. She says at the last minute, go left. So you try to make the left. What do you think happens? You crash. Why? Because something going at such a high speed in one direction can't just abruptly shift into a completely different direction. That's what's happening to men today. Our entire human history is made of men behaving in one way. And now we live in an era in which men are told we are required to act in the polar opposite way. But we don't even get a few years to figure out how to do that. We are told it has to happen now.
I want it now!
So what ends up happening is that we are forced into a different direction. And that's when extremism occurs. When something changes, it is immediate. But when something is growing, it is a slow process. Change is generally associated with resistance and force, but growth is never seen as a bad thing. It's almost always for the betterment of yourself and the people around you. You cannot expect men to change. You must give them room to grow. And by allowing men to grow instead of change, it allows us as a society to better see the stop button. Because without a stop button, you get a lack of balance. And a lack of balance between a man lies a suicidal male. So what happens when you run into the emotionally intelligent man? Well, what I find is that there is oftentimes a lack of acceptance in the things that he is saying, which is the third problem. A lack of acceptance of how men feel. Also commonly known as victim blaming. Now, I'm not here to shout, woe is me. It is always going to be true that more of your life will be your fault than anyone else's because it's yours. But what we also know is that due to most males' desires to sleep with most women, women are generally allowed to get away with things that maybe they shouldn't. They're punished less, they are given more, and it's all in pursuit of sex. This creates a problem, and the problem becomes accountability. So one of the things that I've noticed is that when men do express themselves, usually they are blamed for how they feel because most men feel like women contribute to their problems. It's no secret that there is a loneliness epidemic amongst men, but I also would say that it's no secret that there's a loneliness epidemic amongst the country, amongst the West, amongst the world. And if you have a majority of the men all saying the same things and describing similar problems, it doesn't necessarily seem reasonable to respond to that with, it's your fault. Imagine if you finally were vulnerable as a man in a way that you have been taught not to be, both due to experiences of your own and experiences of others. And these are the things that you hear in response.
There is no male loneliness epidemic.
What can we do? What do we do about the male loneliness epidemic? It is in fact not real.
Men have fell off, and I think we're fucked. Women don't want to be with another woman.
Imagine what it's like to feel that way. You feel rejected. You feel stupid for even attempting to talk about your feelings. And then the worst things can occur. You become resentful and you deject yourself from society. And the reality is loneliness plus resentment plus time usually equals something really, really bad. So let's bullet point this, okay? 3 contributing reasons to the rise and consistency in mass shootings in America and suicides amongst men are going to be: 1, the differences between the way men and women think. Not acknowledging these differences lead to an extreme change in men that is unreasonable to expect. 2, the demand for the change to occur immediately and not for growth to occur. This leads to an overdoing, a resistance, and an internal fight for one's beliefs, even if his beliefs are not correct. 3, a lack of acceptance in how men feel, even if you don't agree with them. Most things in life are going to be your fault. Not only can you control where you go in life, but you can control how you respond to the things you can't control. But I'm sure we can all relate to the idea that sometimes we just want to be heard. Sometimes we want to talk about what the other person did because it helps us process our emotions. By not accepting what they say, what you do is cause men to be less likely to report on their own feelings in the future. So maybe now what you are wondering is, how do we fix it? Well, I'm going to tell you how we fix it. The answer is